Deuteronomy is the fifth book of the Christian Bible. Written by Moses, the book consists of 3 sermons delivered to the Israelites on the plains of Moab shortly before they enter the Promised Land. In chapter 16, Moses is telling the people to celebrate the festivals. Moses wants the people to always remember the story of their journey and God's hand in their history. Without that, he knows, as we see today, that the people will forget or rewrite their history and not appreciate the blessings of God and the sacrifice of their ancestors. Remember, Moses is not going into the Promised Land with them. So he's trying to now build a nation, and part of building that nation is pulling together a judicial system that will bond the nation together. Judicial systems are to administer justice. Ultimately, justice is related to fairness. A new nation based upon the principles of God must act justly. Moses, preparing his people to enter into this promised land, directs that they set up a system of administering justice. A divided nation will not stand. Injustice leads to division and ultimately the fracturing of national bonds. Moses is seeking to solidify the bonds and create a unified Jewish nation. The oldest law school was created around 550 A.D., so they didn't have law schools at this time. The people who were to be the judges were to be selected, and they were to judge with a righteous judgment. 3 things were specifically listed as being unrighteous, and these concepts are still today incorporated in our notion of due process. First, an unbiased tribunal. Judges should not be partial. Now, it's a part of human nature to allow self-interest, friendship, preconceived notions about things and people to influence our view on issues. We all see the world through the lenses of our daily experiences. In essence, we all have bias. To execute justice in our daily lives, we must look at situations uninfluenced by these biases that we have. Moses is saying select judges that have the ability to rise above their own self-bias. Bribery is obviously listed in this list of unrighteous things for judgment. Judges who pursue wealth and reward over justice should have no place in the judicial system. In the American judicial system, bribes are obviously illegal and result in serious criminal and civil sanctions. But inherently honest people sometimes find themselves having a financial interest in a decision or having friends that will be impacted by a decision. In modern courts, judges are required to recuse themselves or disqualify themselves when these conflicts occur. Moses wants this judicial system to avoid the appearance of impropriety or unfairness. He writes that their judicial leaders must seek justice and justice alone and not allow other factors to pervert justice. This was the only way Israel would be able to inherit the Promised Land. As a practical matter, Israel is a nation surrounded by its enemies. If they were to allow injustice to creep into and divide the Jewish people, fracturing them, helping them to feel unfairly treated, a divided Israel would never stand against the much larger and more powerful enemies that surround them. Moses in Deuteronomy also outlines the judicial procedure for this new nation. If a matter was too hard to judge because there was difficulty determining between degrees of guilt for bloodshed, or between one judge or another judge, or between one punishment or another punishment, there was a process to handle that. Moses recognized that no one person would know the answers for every dispute or the right punishment. The aim here was to seek fairness, so the courts had a process to appeal in Israel. These were higher courts where cases were taken that were beyond the local court's abilities. Priests and Levites were there. They were known and understood to be wiser judges and their word, their decision, stood. Under this system, the authority of the judge had to be respected. Contempt of court, failure to obey the court's order, was considered a capital punishment. The only way to keep order in this nation that had no history of democratic institutions was to have a well-developed and well-respected judicial system. A nation that ignores the judicial processes breaks out into chaos. This concept of a nation of laws rather than a nation of men is fundamental to the rule of law even today. Now, before we take this scripture and extrapolate it far beyond where it was intended to be, I remind you that the judges God is demanding respect for here were judges that met the three criteria established in chapter 16. When I read decisions like Dred Scott, sometimes I know that it's very difficult to separate our bias. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.